Yng Nghymru mae gennym gynlluniau uchelgeisiol i greu coedwig genedlaethol a fydd yn rhedeg ar ledled o wlad trwy ecosystem gysylltiedig o goetiroedd hynafol a rhai newydd. Bydd y Coedwig Genedlaethol i Gymru yn perthyn i bob un ohonom ac o fydd i ni i gyd. Ein ni fydd i'w chreu, ein ni fydd i'w meithrin, ein ni fydd i'w choleddu am flynyddoedd i ddod. Bydd yn amddiffyn ein gwlad ac yn rhoi ffordd fwy cynaliadwy o fyw ar gyfer cenedlaethau'r dyfodol. Dyma'ch Coedwig Genedlaethol, byddwch yn rhan ohono. In Wales, we have ambitious plans to create a national forest which will run the length and breadth of the country through a connected ecosystem of ancient and new woodlands. The National Forest for Wales will belong to and benefit us all. It will be ours to create. It will be ours to cultivate. It will be ours to cherish for years to come. It will protect our country and provide a more sustainable way of life for our future generations. This is your National Forest. Be part of it.
Helo, shwmai, pnawn da, croeso mawr i chi ar gyfer yn digwyddiad i drafod Coedwig Genedlaethol i Gymru, wrth gwrs, ac i glywed eich safbwyntiau chi, eich cwestiynau chi, a lleisiau chi. A y sesiwn ola. Good afternoon to you all. Welcome. My name's Chris Jones. Welcome to you all to this afternoon, the final day of this special event on the National Forest for Wales, and it's to hear your views and your voices. This is the sixth and yes, the final session. It's been over the course of 3 days. And again, we have a wide range of people joining us. Diolch i chi gyd am gyfrestru, ac wrth gwrs, fydd yna gyfle i bawb i gyfrannu yn y ddwy iaith yn Gymraeg ac yn Saesneg, wrth gwrs. So, as Marvin Gaye once sang, what's going on? Well, I'm sure that most of you are aware that the First Minister, Mr Mark Drakeford, of course, announced his intention to develop a national forest for Wales in his manifesto commitments in 2018. And last year, on the 12th of March, he officially launched the National Forest Programme. So let's have our keynote address. It's sort of a closing address, therefore, for this morning. It's a pre-recorded message from the Minister of the Environment herself, the Energy and Rural Affairs, of course, at Welsh Government, and that's Lesley Griffiths.
Pnawn da, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank each and every person who's taken time over the last 3 days to engage with us and learn more about the National Forest Programme in Wales and the many benefits our woodlands and trees bring. It is good to see that despite the coronavirus pandemic delaying our ability to engage with you all face to face, there has been such a huge amount of interest and participation on platforms like this over the last year. It has shown how committed Wales is as a nation to make positive changes within our natural environment. I hope you will have gained a useful insight into the progress being made to create a real national asset for all people in Wales. At the opening of this event, the First Minister touched upon the progress and exciting opportunities the National Forest presents for Wales, announcing £5 million for National Forest for Wales schemes for communities and landowners. Part of a multi-million-pound investment, we have committed to create a greener Wales. In the lead up to the summer, I would urge organisations and communities to begin to consider whether your woodland can already, or could with some improvement, meet the outcomes of the National Forest to be awarded National Forest for Wales status. Further detail on this process will follow in due course. I would also encourage anyone who shares our ambition and is interested in working within their local area and is keen to improve and create for their own part of the National Forest to submit a bid to the Community Woodland Scheme currently open on the National Lottery Heritage Fund website. Alongside this, I'm pleased to say we will continue to work with Natural Resources Wales this year to create and enhance a number of woodlands on the Welsh Government estate, improving their overall quality and allowing greater access for all people to enjoy those great woodlands. I would also like to take this opportunity to update you on some of the wider opportunities available within forestry. As part of the National Forest projects last year, I announced the Forest Industry Recovery Scheme, which provided funding to the sector to help increase its capacity within the nursery sector and support for dealing with trees suffering ash dieback. This scheme was extremely well received, and given this success, I'm pleased to say we have built these aspects of support into the next round of the Timber Business Investment Scheme, which opened last week for expressions of interest and will close on 9th April. This will be open for applications from private forest and tree nursery owners, local authorities or other public sector forest owners that are engaged in forest planting and management, timber harvesting and processing to support projects that realise forestry potential in Wales. The National Forest is a long-term ambition which will create new woodlands and contribute to our tree planting and climate targets in Wales. However, as the First Minister said, this will take time, and in the short term, most tree planting in Wales will be achieved through our Glassdeer Woodland Creation Scheme, which recently closed with a budget of £9 million. I can see the idea of creating extensive new networks of woodlands and improving our existing ecosystems is gathering momentum, with many organisations and communities across Wales already getting involved. I know that Welsh businesses, communities and particularly our foresters and farmers will continue to help us create the National Forest. Finally, I would like to say thank you again for joining us through this event. Your views and your voices have been valuable for us within Welsh Government in understanding the nation's aspiration for woodlands in Wales, and has certainly helped shape our thinking for the formal consultation planned for later this year. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much for listening.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Gweinidog. Thank you, Minister. Now, if you are into Twitter, on social media, please put any content on Twitter as much as you can with photographs or content or comments. There is a hashtag, it's hashtag National Forest Wales, neu yn Gymraeg wrth gwrs, ac i ni'n gofyn i bawb i wneud pethau yn ddwyieithog gymaint â phosib, hashtag Coedwig Genedlaethol Cymru. So please use the Twitter hashtag if you do tweet. Felly, beth sydd o'n blaenau ni prynhawn? What's in store for us in this last session this afternoon? Well, the aim of the event over the 3 days has been twofold: to focus on the views of the people of Wales, of course, on the development of the National Forest, the people of Wales being you. So, dyna chi, wrth gwrs, y bobl, whilst also exploring the benefits of woodland and trees for all, demonstrating how valuable trees actually are from a social, economic and environmental perspective. And so over the course of the 3 days, we've had themed sessions lined up focusing on these benefits. And they're called Trees and Communities, of course, Trees and the Economy, and that's the topic we're focusing on this afternoon, and Trees for the Environment. Felly, cymunedau, yr economi a'r amgylchedd. Nawr, mae'r dair thema wedi cael ei darparu dwywaith yn ystod yr wythnos i roi cyfle i bach o bawb i gymryd rhan. All 3 themes have been delivered twice during the course of the event and at different times to enable as many as possible to have access. Now, for each of these sessions, there are 3 parts. Rhan 1, part 1, which is where we are right now, an information sharing session with updates on Welsh Government policy and showcase items, and we'll be using the Zoom webinar link, of course. Felly, sesiwn rhannu gwybodaeth ar newyddion diweddara ynglyn â'r prosiect cyffroes yma. Rhan 2, part 2, well, it'll be a discussion session, and we'll be accessing that through a Zoom meeting link in the conversation room, and I'll explain about that in a second. Felly, sesiwn drafod. A wedyn, rhan 3, part 3, a panel Q&A. I can see the panelists waiting there. They're eager to answer your questions later on. I'll be facilitating that when we reconvene back in the webinar room, in the event box room, and we'll explain all about that in a second. I'm hoping that you'll have some questions for the panelists. And please use the Q&A facility here on Zoom as much as you can. Felly, sesiwn holi ag ateb, a dwi wir gobeithio gewn ni ddigon o gwestiynau yn y Gymraeg, wrth gwrs, ac yn y Saesneg. Ac wrth gwrs, mae yna wybodaeth am yn siaradwyr ni. They are biographies of all the contributors, synopses of their various sessions in the showcase room section on Eventbox. There's also a room about the networking session we had on Wednesday and a Q&A room as well. So feel free to browse these rooms at your leisure. As we can see, yes, it is the main room here is being recorded, as will the Q&A session later on, hopefully just before 3 o'clock, but the breakout discussion groups won't be recorded. So yeah, Eventbox is a superb new platform. It's very easy to navigate. It's very, very good. You might need a bit of support regarding some of this information. You might get stuck somewhere, but no, don't panic. Don't be shy, don't be embarrassed, don't delay, go to the lobby of Event Box. Look for that word lobby at all times. If you really do get stuck, well, Adam is our resident technical expert. He's there waiting to solve any problems. There is an email address as well, info@eventbox.wales, info@eventbox, of course, .wales. Right, nawr, cyn mwy hir, i ni'n mynd i wrando ar 3 prosiect sy'n mynd i roi syniad bach i ni o'r fath o waith sy'n ymlaen ar hyn o bryd. Soon, we'll have today's 3 showcases for you, and they'll illustrate the work that's currently happening. But firstly, yn gynta, let's turn to Welsh Government and a member of the National Forest team to give us an overview of developments so far. And I say member, she is the head. Felly rowch groeso os gwelwch yn dda. Please welcome the head of the National Forest Programme, Erica Dawson-Davies.
Croeso everybody. Welcome to the last session of a very eventful and exciting, and I've run out of adjectives. It's been a fantastic set of 3 days and 6 sessions. So welcome. I'm here to give you a quick introduction to the background of the National Forest, where we're up to and the next steps. Next slide, please, Adam. The National Forest Programme was launched on the 12th of March last year, so very apt as we're a year ago today. It was launched at the Woodland Trust site at Brynau and Nice exactly now, last year. And the ambition for that National Forest and the ambition then from the First Minister is that it extends the length and breadth of Wales. It can provide many opportunities by planting, growing and protecting trees, contributing to the decarbonisation goals and the climate change emergency, halting the decline of biodiversity and improving health and well-being of our people, and supporting commercial business activity, which is what we're going to focus on in this last session today. Next slide, please, Adam. So what is the National Forest? What is the National Forest? On a local level, it's woodlands for people, nature and commercial opportunities, new and existing woodlands in urban and rural locations in public and private ownership. On a regional level, it's spread across Wales. We're looking at an outcomes-based approach rather than it being geographic. And we'll talk a bit more about that later in the presentation. On a national level, it's an umbrella and a catalyst for woodland creation, better management of woodland, and potentially those woodlands could then become encompassed into the National Forest. It's a long-term programme. We've heard a lot over the last 2 days about how long-term this is, how multi-generational it is. It will deliver multi-level benefits, and we liken it to the Coast Path, and it's got that type of potential. On a global level, it's a brand and it's an asset for Wales. It could be a tourism destination, but it could also act as a carbon sink for Wales, supporting the net zero emissions targets. Next slide, please, Adam. One thing that we've been able to do whilst developing the National Forest is work with the National Museum for Wales, the National Library for Wales and the Royal Commission for Ancient and Historic Monuments to look at setting up a people's collection. We're hoping this will document the National Forest as it grows and progresses, and it's a digital platform where anybody can upload their memories of trees, their poetry, video, music, photography, anything to do with trees in your local area, any projects you're doing, anything at all. We ask communities to come together and upload their information to that site, and it will be held there as a digital archive of where we are with the National Forest. The First Minister has already contributed his memories of woodlands and his thoughts on woodlands, and we have lots of the work that's already been happening across the last couple of days in there already. So please take a look. There is a link there, and we will supply that in the chat bar later. Next slide, please, Adam. So the National Forest in Wales is based on an outcomes-based system. We have 6 outcomes we've been working with stakeholders over the last year, and those 6 cover the whole multi-level benefit delivery of the National Forest. So the first one is good quality, well-designed and managed resilient woodlands. This encompasses the UKFS standard, so the UK Forestry Standard, and it looks at bringing woodlands up to that standard if we can do it. This is a quality outcome. Then we're looking at connected woodlands and connecting in lots of different ways. We've had a lot of discussion over the last 3 days about how we can connect woodlands, whether it be people's connections emotionally to woodlands, infrastructure, woodland trails, woodland walks. It's been a brilliant discussion about the connectivity of the woodlands. Also, we're looking at dynamic multi-purpose woodlands for woodlands and trees in Wales. So this encompasses all the different aspects of forestry and woodlands and looking at an integrated approach. The next one is woodlands that demonstrate learning, research and innovation. So from forest schools ideas through to real detailed research on what trees can offer society and connecting society back with trees. Another aspect is community involvement in woodlands, and this is really, really important. This is communities looking after the woodlands. This is communities having ownership and looking at how they can get involved in woodlands, whether it be productive woodlands or whether it be community woodlands in urban areas. There's a huge discussion to be had on that. And we also have woodlands that are accessible to people, bringing green spaces nearer to people and where they are, and just looking at how that can happen in different ways. And we've had lots of really detailed discussion on that over the last couple of days. It's been really useful. Next slide, please, Adam. One thing that happened last year was the Minister launched the first 14 exemplar sites. These sites were on the Welsh Government woodland estate, and we tested those outcomes against the existing exemplar sites on the Welsh Government woodland estate and launched the initial 14 sites. As you can see there, the map shows those woodlands stretch right across Wales. And what we're planning to do this year is add to those 14 in different ways. The First Minister announced a new scheme on Wednesday, which looks at how people can look at their woodlands and bring them into the National Forest as an exemplar. More detail on that will come later in the year, but we would like people to start thinking now if they have woodlands that they feel come up to National Forest status, and there'll also be funding available to help people to do that as well. So that will come later in the year. As I say, watch this space and start thinking of how we can start connecting these sites together. Next slide, please, Adam. Well, another thing we've been looking at across the last year is what does the National Forest look like? Where is it? This is a question we get asked a lot. It's been asked a lot over the last 3 days. There's 3 scenarios that we've come up with here. These are absolutely purely indicative. There is no prescription to these at all. They are purely conceptual ideas of how the National Forest could be organised and arranged. So this slide here shows a very simple north to south, south to north idea, which is a woodland way across Wales, which encompasses some of our existing ancient woodland sites, existing exemplar sites, AONBs, and looking at existing forestry and what's already there. So that's a very simple north to south, south to north. Next slide, please, Adam. The next slide is more of a circular approach, and this approach looks at bringing in the coastal path into a terrestrial zone, and also looks at the AONBs and the national parks and ones that have more of a marine focus, so Pembrokeshire, Ynys Môn, looking at specific areas and how they would connect into that circuitry idea. This then brings in, again, the exemplar sites, existing ancient woodland sites, and looking at all different ways. As I say, this isn't prescriptive. There's no direction on this at all. They're purely discussion pieces, so we can start talking about how we organise the National Forest. Next slide, please, Adam. The last approach is a hub and spoke approach. Now, this uses existing ideas of what what we have already in Wales, and the hubs could be, they're not designed yet. We haven't decided at all what they are. They could be the existing exemplar sites. They could be existing woodlands that we already have. They could be connectors. But one idea behind this is that we use the area statement work that Jeff spoke about this morning from NRW to inform the hubs, to inform the connections, and to look at a place-based approach. These hubs, as I say, there is no set place where they could be, but they're strategic, and they could look at how local communities can then join into the network of the National Forest, and we can build that connectivity across Wales. As I say, they're just ideas, and they're looking at ways that we can bring different things together. The area statements and the local nature partnerships being an intrinsic part of that. So moving on to next steps. We have the People's Collection, as I mentioned. We have a consultation coming up in the winter, as our Minister just alluded to. And we also have the new scheme coming out in the summer. So a lot going on, and there's already a lot going on as has been discussed in the last 3 days. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for participating. It's been a brilliant event, I have to say, and you've all been so generous in sharing your knowledge and your ideas. So let's enjoy this last event that we have now and this last session. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you.
Diolch, Erica. Diolch yn fawr iawn. I think that next slide, please, Adam, will be the phrase that stays in my head, and certainly for weeks and weeks to come. So diolch yn fawr iawn am hwnna, Erica. And talk about sharing information, ladies and gentlemen. I have to thank Kelly, first of all. The chat button has been constantly acted as it were right from the very beginning. Kelly, that loads and loads of information there and links. It might be worth, if you can access the chat button, everyone to go on that. Kelly has some fantastic ideas, some fantastic comments, and all kinds of links and suggestions on the chat button. Felly diolch o galon I Kelly, and that's what the chat button is there for, obviously, to use in that respect. Including a symposium, by the way, in May and June, and maybe a member of the team would like to be part of that. Okay. So, as I said, we'd like to ask our 3 special guests this afternoon to present their individual showcases. Felly, yn gynta, I ni'n mynd I fynd at Lucy. First, we have Lucy von Weber. Lucy is Head of Marketing for Visit Wales. And we'll talk about the Heart of Visit Wales 5-year strategy and its emphasis, I think, on growing tourism for the good of Wales. So, Lucy, over to you, and you are live. Can you unmute yourself, Lucy, first of all? We can't
There
hear
you go.
Oh,
Thank you, Chris. Diolch, Chris. Prynhawn da pawb. Fantastic to be here today. I'm really pleased to be part of this because this project's just filling us all with so much excitement for the next few years. And also, I just wanted to mention People's Collection. If you haven't used it before, it is a fantastic resource. It's a rabbit hole, though. You go in and search for one thing, and before you know it, an hour or two has gone by. Just a fab resource. So, Adam, would you mind moving the slide on for me, please? So, as Chris said, I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those 3 things today. We started last year, January 2020, with a tourism action plan, very different from anything that we'd done previously. We also started last year with our Year of Outdoors, a themed year, and then of course lockdown happened. And I'm going to just show you how that changed how we adapted things over the course of 12 months. Next slide, please, Adam, as well. And I think it's important to underline here that our tourism strategy, we will be going back to it. It was a 5-year plan. It was very different, and I'm going to talk about some of the features in it and how they relate to things like landscape and environment in a minute or two's time. But it's been part of a sort of a sea change in the way that we approach planning, marketing, planning development, and really tying in with policy across Wales. You could pop the next slide on, please. At the moment, we've spent the last 4 weeks with probably around 200 or so organisations doing recovery planning work, feeding back on everything from destination management to reopening safely. You know, we've just heard the First Minister again today talk about the next steps, the phased opening of the visitor economy again. All of those things meant that the strategic plan that we kicked off last year went on hold for a few months while we've sort of backfilled doing various things that have been demanded by the situation we're in. But that plan still is an incredibly important foundation, and I'm going to put a link in the chat so that you can have all the resources for that. It's I think as well, what I'd like to say today is that I'm talking about a sort of a climate and a context for all the things that Ruth and Rosie and Nicola will talk about when they come to their presentations. Because my umbrella, if you like, is just explaining the context of how we market Wales, but also how we see the longer term future of Wales and the economy around tourism. So tourism at the moment, when we went out of 2019 into 2020, tourism was contributing around 6 billion in visitor spend to the economy in Wales. It also represents around 9% of the total workforce in Wales. So all of those things, we were in a really good position going into 2020. Adam, you having problems? I'll have to show my holiday snaps next, otherwise, if indeed I've been on holiday.
Well, you're doing really well. You carry on.
Don't. I'll tell people far too much personal information. Ruth can tell you that. You forget that there are few people on the call with you. So yeah, we went into 2020. Everything was great. Obviously, lockdown hit us in March last year. But one of the very quick films I'm going to show you is actually how we entered 2020 in Year of the Outdoors. And you'll see when I show it to you in a second that all of the emphasis was on community, outdoors, environment. Lots of groups of community people working together, whether they were swimming or cycling or eating out. So we've had to change things substantially over the last 12 months, not least of which, you know, all of our advertisements and all of our imagery, which was full of big groups of people enjoying Wales and the outdoors, have obviously had to all be put on hold with social distancing and all the other aspects of that brought with it. Lovely, diolch Adam. So just in case we can't get back to the slides, that's fine, because I'll freestyle it, Chris. I'm going to freestyle it here, because I've literally just popped a link into the chat bar, and you'll be able to get background on a lot of what I was going to talk about directly from that link. Our strap line, if you like, our tagline for priorities for the visitor economy, which is the 2020 to 25 plan, is growing tourism for the good of Wales. And it sounds cheesy, but that is basically the approach summed up in one sentence. Whoa, lovely, thanks Adam, diolch. So that means growing tourism that is good for communities, that's good for the environment, it's good for health and well-being. You know, in previous years, you'd look back maybe 10 years ago, and tourism was all about volume, more people, more money, spending, you know, doing more all through the year. Well, it's really started to sharpen things and put things in focus over the last 12 months. We're in a really good position now for the next few years, because we'd already, next slide please Adam, we'd already decided that we were changing a lot of our KPIs, a lot of our outputs, a lot of our success. And if you could just hit the other button, Adam, it'll bring in the last line as well. There you go. So right there at the bottom, alongside economic growth at the top, environmental, cultural and health well-being, and overall satisfaction of visitors and also local people. Next slide, please, Adam. We've got 3 core pillars of our brand. And, you know, I could talk about the brand for days. I've decided not to today because we've only got a few minutes, but 3 core pillars of the brand: the Wales tourism offer and the Wales country offer. Culture, including our heritage and our language. Adventure, strong adventure product in Wales, and a lot of that product uses the forestries and the woodlands, for example, the mountain biking communities, and also landscape. Landscape is an absolute cornerstone of our 3 brand pillars. And what that means to the uninitiated in brand is that whenever we do something, whether it's an advertisement, whether it's a piece of copy on the website, or whether it's related to wider projects that we work on, that is one of the things that's always at the heart of how we consider the context of what we produce. Next slide, please, Adam. Now, although the Year of Outdoors, jazz hands, big TV ad and all the things that went with it had to be put on hold, we've been working on what's going to be important to visitors as they start to have this phased return to Wales. And not just a phased return to Wales, but what we've seen over the last year is Wales residents enjoying Wales more than ever. So one thing right at the top of that, and I'm sure, well, I hope everyone would agree, probably what's happened in the last 12 months is that affinity with the outdoors, that feeling of fresh air and natural beauty and the environment is even more, prevalent in people's decision making when they choose to go out for the day or they choose a holiday or an overnight stay. Next slide, please, Adam. And I'll just let that pop up. This again sums up our action plan, priorities for the visitor economy in one slide. It's all about seasonality, spend and spread. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we spread the benefit across all of Wales. And that's why when Erica ran through some of those slides there showing linear and also circular routes and some of the potential ways that the National Forest will form itself and will be presented to people, that will help us in terms of spreading the benefit of business across Wales, taking people to areas they may not have been to before, trying to take people away from those really pressurized hotspots and bringing them out into areas where spend can improve for local communities. There's something for them to, there's an economic plus point then for wider areas of Wales rather than just some of those honeypots. And seasonality, that's probably one of the most important things that we're working on now. We know that visitors come in that sort of middle in the summer period. What we're trying to do is expressly tell people why they should visit in those shoulder seasons, as we call them in tourism. Early spring, autumn, winter. And again, forest will play an important part of that message. Next slide, please, Adam. And Erica mentioned the people of Wales. Up until about a year ago, speaking to the people of Wales and encouraging the people of Wales to find out more and go on holiday more in their own country was not one of our priorities. Since January 2020, in Wales, business has become so much more important, and that was before COVID came. So we were looking at new staycation markets in the UK. Again, that's exploding this year. People wanting a retreat, wanting nature, wanting to feel that they're out in the fresh air and in a safe environment. International visitors, we're still on our priority list, but obviously dependent on things like vaccine rollout and also international regulations around travel. But the people of Wales are so important for us. And if you could move on to the next slide, Adam. What you'll see as of tomorrow and for the next 2 months, but particularly over the next 4 weeks, is what we call ADDO, which if you don't speak Welsh, ADDO means promise in Welsh. And last summer, along with all our private sector stakeholders, but also third sector and public sector, so people at national parks, we developed ADDO, which was all about a promise that you make to Wales when you visit. And it isn't just a promise that you make to Wales, it's a promise that we make to you. So it's about keeping you safe. If you could pop on to the next slide, Adam, please. Respecting your communities, respecting the land and respecting each other. So for many of us who remember the Countryside Code, we're also doing a lot of work on the Countryside Code that ADDO will be involved with over the next few weeks, because even though we're moving to a stay local position as of tomorrow, as was just announced at lunchtime, we'll then be moving from the 27th of March into a position where stay local lifts, if all goes according to plan, self-contained accommodation can reopen. So at the moment, a lot of our efforts are not about saying come to Wales, come to Wales. We're looking at how we manage where there'll be absolute demand to where there's supply, and that we make sure that those visits are good for the people who are making the visits and good for the communities that are experiencing them. If you can pop on to the next slide, Adam, because I've nearly done now. So I'm going to finish off with a film, but just wanted to sum up these last couple of slides. The well-being priorities are at the heart of priorities for the visitor economy. Next slide, please, Adam. People benefits. People benefits feature absolutely, they're integral to all of the planning that we're doing. And I think for anyone who's been involved, even if you haven't been closely involved in sort of government or media this year, you can't fail to notice how important community engagement and satisfaction of visitors and local people has been in the press over the last 12 months. you just pop onto the next slide, please, Adam? So, as I say, growing tourism for the good of Wales is where we begin and end on priorities for the visitor economy. And what I'd like Adam to do, if you wouldn't mind just playing the last 30-second film, you'll start to see this not only on digital channels, but also on TV over the next few weeks, as we try and move from being in lockdown to moving back to a responsible welcome and responsible visiting throughout Wales. So if you could just pop it on, Adam, that will be fine. Or not. Thank you.
Let's make a promise together to look after each other, to care for our communities, to protect this epic land. Addo, make your promise to Wales.
Diolch, Adam. That's lovely. Thank you, Chris. I'll hand back to you. And obviously, when we come to Q&A, I can see the little things popping up in the chat bar. Happy to take anything there. Apologies about the technical problems and my filling.
That wasn't your fault at all. So thank you very much, and Adam handled that wonderfully. That was an excellent presentation, Lucy. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn. We will be seeing you later on, as you say, at the panel Q&A later on this afternoon, hopefully just before 3 o'clock. Maybe, Adam, you can share the link that Lucy shared with us all. Lucy, if you could put your mic on mute, that'd be great. I think Lucy just put it just for the panelists. It'd be nice if you can share that with everyone. We might have a gremlin in the chat room as well, Adam. I'm giving you all kinds of stuff here. So we might have a gremlin. People can't seem to go on to the chat. Apart from Kelly. Kelly is definitely using the chat, and good for you, Kelly. Well done. Okay. Right. As I alluded to earlier on, of course, there is information about all our speakers on the event box lobby page. Okay, Nessa, we have Ruth Wakert from the Wye Valley Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. Ruth is going to be talking about the importance of inclusivity to grow a sustainable economy. I think, Ruth, so again, you're live, over to you.
Thank you. Just wait for the slides to come up. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you for inviting me along today. I'm going to talk a little bit about a forest for everyone. So this is the view from the Eagle's Nest viewpoint in the lower Wye Valley woodlands. It's at the southern end of the AONB, and it's one of the 14 national forest sites. And the image that you can see behind me is of the same view taken in the painted in the 19th century, and it just shows the longevity of some of these woodlands that we're talking about. So the Eagle's Nest was the highest view in the picturesque landscape park at Piercefield. It was a highlight on the Wye Tor, which is what this image demonstrates, which was very fashionable in the late 18th century. Piercefield was built on the wealth of Caribbean sugarcane, and Valentine Morris, who constructed the landscape walks and the viewpoints in the 1740s, owned slaves called Piercefield, Beaufort and Chepstow. A later owner called Nathaniel Wells was the son of a plantation owner. His mother was a black slave, and he was sent to Britain to be educated, and he actually became the first High Sheriff of Monmouthshire in the mid-1800s. So it's a stunning view, you can see, and it's a favourite with visitors who come, take in the woodlands and leave with memories of an amazing panorama which stretches across the Severn Estuary to Bristol and beyond. But few visitors are aware of the dark history that panorama encompasses, and even fewer ethnic minority visitors cross the Severn Bridge to enjoy these woodlands. Next slide, please. A forest for everyone is the aspiration for the National Forest Wales, but we know too many people, including ethnic minorities, feel the countryside is not for them. As part of our work developing the 2020 Wye Valley River Festival, we plan to bring a group of culturally diverse artists from Bristol to explore some of the barriers people of colour encounter when visiting the countryside. Lockdown changed the shape of this activity, but a group of artists did eventually walk out west last summer. The result was a creative, thoughtful response to being a person of colour and a city dweller whilst visiting the Wye Valley, its woods and the river. Next slide, please. Through their films, podcasts and poetry, the Walk Out West artists highlighted the challenges involved if we want to be inclusive. This is one of the responses. We wondered how come we had never really known about the Wye, especially as it's so close and so beautiful. We pondered the difficulties of getting there, both psychological and economic. We discussed the different emotions felt when standing out as a person of colour in a white rural area. Next slide, please. So this is Ruth Pitter, who was one of the artists who came over to the Wye Valley. And I'd just like to show you a short extract from that film. If you could do that, Adam, thank you.
Intrepidation. Journey. If feeling inspired to tread your paths, how do I start? The pilgrimage to your temple of discovery begins even before one intrepid step. An overcoming of the stark, irreverent whisper in my head. Don't you dare believe you have the right to venture to my valley and fall in love with my terrain. It is a forceful whisper, a lingering whisper, without truth, yet its venom has too often stung. But my intrepid spirit emerges determined by images of your splendour that entice me to your landscape. With steely courage, I abandon the familiarity of home and lingering whisper for dauntless discovery of your realm. Yet my journey to you is bombarded by obstacles, a whirling weir of non-functioning buses and unreliable timetables. I'm left thrashing around, battling to stay afloat. A journey leaving me bereft of notes snatched from the meagre contents of my purse as payment for the privilege of an 18-mile bus voyage over 4 exasperating hours. I am alone to save myself from swirling towards a traumatic edge, weary from this travel ordeal. This is not the dance I would opt for to gain your presence, and I ask myself, can this venture truly be worthwhile?
The next slide, please. What stands out in that video for me is the self-doubt, don't you dare, and the economic and physical barriers to visiting if you're using public transport. There's a few snippets here from the podcast by one of the other artists, Jasmine Ketabula-Foley, called Earth Tales. They just voice some of the trepidation that ethnic minorities and city dwellers have about visiting the countryside. My family wouldn't be comfortable coming here. They would be looking around to see if there are any other people like us. I only access open green spaces because I had someone who regularly invited me and transported me there. Access for someone from the inner city is not so easy. It seems accessible for people from the other side of the world, but not for people who actually live here. There's definitely something about lack of access to open spaces for people who come from inner city areas. Next slide, please. So what can we do to encourage more people to be intrepid, to venture out into the woodlands? These are 3 of the artists, Rob, Ruth and Jasmine, and the group of Walk Out West artists just put this one sentence together that really kind of sets a good starting point to open up the conversation about how we grow and how we work towards an inclusive, sustainable, healthy economy. We need to help people feel confident enough to plan a day trip on their own, knowing where they can go and what they might like to do, how it feels to be in the wilds of the Wye or any other woodlands in Wales, to know that they belong in this environment, they have shared memories and interest and are part of the culture of the countryside too. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Ruth. Once again, really nice presentation. Love that video, love that voiceover. What a voice, that was excellent. Thank you very, very much, Ruth. And again, we'll see you later on in the panel. Thank you all for the messages and links on the chat. Now, if I'm right in saying this, hopefully somebody can confirm this. The chat is actually being recorded, okay? So your views are being recorded in the chat button, because I'm seeing the red recording light flashing as we speak. So hopefully everything will be recorded and will be made available. Okay, right. We're going to go on, if we may, please. Man nesa i'r ola well, we'll move swiftly on, if we may, to the third showcase, and it's entitled Cardiff, Our City of Trees. And I'm going to ask our double act for today, Nicola Hutchinson and Rosie James from Cardiff Council and Cardiff Park Service, to give us this final showcase before we move on. So Rosie, I was going to say Rosie and Jim there, no, Rosie and Nicola. You better unmute yourself, Rosie, otherwise, there we go. Right.
Thank you for inviting us. Pnawn da, everybody. We've come to talk to you about woodlands that are actually much closer to the urban fringe, in fact, right inside the city. So we're talking to you about Cardiff, Our City of Trees, and it's an image that people don't really think about Cardiff as being a place where there are a lot of trees and a lot of woodland. So if I could have the first slide, please. Nicola and I have been working for a long while with a group in Cardiff called the Green Infrastructure Group, where we're looking at the connected green spaces that we manage and we look after, and also those that are not council green spaces. And one of the things that we first talked about was the fact that Cardiff is not just a city of sport and shopping, which seemed to be the big sort of tagline at the time. This is quite a few years ago. We had an iTree report done of the city and discovered that Cardiff has 18.9% of tree canopy in the city, and we manage as a council more than 1,500 hectares of green space, of which we've got 236 hectares of woodland. The plan on the left shows the areas of woodland in Cardiff, predominantly the sort of north and western areas, some very beautiful woodlands, protected woodlands, and actually quite connected to the city because of our river corridors, which provide footpaths which link us out to the outer parts of the city. And the plan on the right shows the blue areas, which are all of our open spaces, and the green bits show the woodlands that are actually under Cardiff's protection, the council's ownership. So if I could have the next slide, please. So part of our marketing of our open spaces was about looking at our natural spaces and trying to promote this message that we have got a lot more than just shopping and sport, and we've developed a website called Outdoor Cardiff, which gives you an opportunity to sort of access all of the open air things that we do in the city, including a lot about the biodiversity, the parks, and the more natural spaces and the activities and events that link to those. So Outdoor Cardiff has been quite a successful way of pooling all of those things together, and it very much sort of links into this idea of connectivity and connecting to activities in the open air. So I'll pass on to Nicola now for the next part.
Next slide, please. Okay, we have, as Rosie has said, 236 hectares of woodland. That doesn't include all the other trees within the city, and we've got an extensive network of street trees and parks trees as well as all that. So there is a lot of connectivity already there, but we have connectivity and habitat work to do. But within the woodlands we do look after, we have a lot of community involvement. So we have a network of friends and community groups, over 27 groups that we work with across the city. So we get people involved in helping us manage the woodlands and getting out and exploring. So it also is about offering events and activities, but it's not only walking. So the city has a lot of pressure on our woodlands because it's in the urban environment. So we have activities like forest schools, getting education involved in it. We have horse riding in some of our sites. We also have some cycling, which the mountain biking side of it can cause us some issues. In part, some of it's historical, because some of it we don't actually permit. There's bylaws against cycling on public open spaces in a lot of cases, and in particular some of our woodlands apply with that. But in more recent years, we've been finding a lot of use by mountain bikers, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not so good. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, feeding into some of the issues we have, and the issues are because we're in an urban environment. We have a lot of pressures. So some of the images I've got there are some of the things we found within our woodlands. In particular, when we're talking about the mountain bike side of things, it's not just someone going for a nice ride through the woodland. It can also be people who take a spade with them or fell trees and construct huge ramps and jumps. And on the face of it, if you're a mountain biker, that's probably absolutely fantastic and great fun. But there are other aspects you have to look at. This summer, one was constructed through a badger set. So there are impacts to the environment within our woodlands. And that particular incident sparked a lot of conversation and initiated some working with NRW and other local landowners to find out if others have got similar issues and if there's ways that we can work together to try and start addressing some of those issues and manage the situation. Our woodlands are open 24 hours a day. We don't have enough staff to be patrolling, because that's one of the things that always comes back from members of the public or councillors or other people who are inquiring is kind of, well, where are the staff to stop people doing things that they shouldn't be, or educate people. We have 2 woodland rangers that cover that 236 hectares of woodland. They're thin on the ground. But one of the things within this conversation we've been having through NRW and other landowners is we had a questionnaire done last summer, which was quite interesting in hearing how people use woodlands. It's not just the ones that are owned by Cardiff Council. This is also Wildlife Trust, the other ones that form part of the SAC in the area. So there's quite a number of landowners involved. And some of the comments coming back were that lockdown has changed how people use it. 55% of the people that were questioned said that it influenced how they use the woodlands. There were also other comments relating to the different types of uses. So we have recreation in the form of walking, running, cycling, mountain biking, ordinary biking, which is sticking to paths mainly, horse riding, and just generally exploring nature and just enjoying being in the outdoors. We do also have other issues with motorbikes, off-road biking going through some of our sites, which is a difficult one, and we do work with the police on that one. But that creates noise damage, and people can be quite scared using the sites when that takes over. One of our other issues we do come across a lot is people having fires in woodlands, and on the face of that can be an enjoyable experience, but often they do them at the base of trees, which means they're kind of trying to make the tree fall over, which obviously they ultimately do, or we have to come in and fell them because they're deemed unsafe. And unfortunately they usually choose some quite large, nice specimens within a woodland, so it does have a damaging impact onto the woodland. The other type of things that happen, they build tree houses. There's a massive range of things, as well as litter, fly tipping, and in some cases things like green waste fly tipping on the edge of woodlands, releasing alien species into our woodland sites. So not that we want to dwell on too many of the more unpleasant things that we deal with, but it is a challenging environment in the woodlands in an urban city or on the urban fringe. I will hand back over to Rosie, I think, on the next one.
Can we have the next slide then? Oh,
sorry, I forgot this bit. Apologies, I forgot our little roving bit in the middle. This is just an example. Forest Scannell is one of our, it's a really important site. It's part of the SAC and it's a triple S site. So it's a really sensitive one from a biodiversity perspective. This is the site we had the problem with mountain bikers destroying a badger set. Luckily, it wasn't active at that time, but as some of you may know, that badger sets stay dormant, but they come back round to empty ones sort of on a regular basis. But we started looking at sort of where's this kind of thing advertised, because we were finding a really increased pressure on this site from trails being created and jumps being created and the rest of it. And then we did a Google search and we discovered that it's advertised on a website. That website advertises legitimate sites that are promoted and courses are actively put in. But this site has obviously got a lot of routes that are being promoted on this site, but we actually don't, it's not a legitimate site, so it shouldn't really be there, and there's been no consultation with us as the landowner. We are trying to look at ways with NRW to manage this. And I'm not necessarily saying we're going to stop it, but it's trying to manage it and reduce the damaging impact. And now I will hand over to Rosie. Apologies for that.
Thank you. So looking to the future, we're working on a big project, which is a 10-year project of increasing canopy across the city, which is part of the City's zero carbon strategy. This is our citywide tree canopy expansion programme, and we've looking to get to 25% canopy cover, from 18.9% to 25% canopy cover in the city, which will require an additional 839 hectares of tree planting over the next decade to get to that point, which doesn't sound huge, but our open space that we own ourselves is 1,500 hectares, so it's more than half of what we already have as open space. So we're working with other partners to identify areas of land that can be put into tree planting, and also there's going to be a whole series of strands to this. I see in the chat people are talking about working with the community. We already do that, but this is actually, we're going to be putting together a tree warden programme as part of this, to try and encourage people not just to see trees as, you know, something beautiful, but trees that are incredibly functional for the city as a whole, and trying to get the message across about what trees are actually doing for our environment. So all of this really links in well into the sort of surrounding areas, linking into tree canopy in our surrounding counties, and also linking obviously to the National Forest Programme. So, you know, we may sound a little bit negative. It's hard work managing trees in a very, very built up area. And even though Cardiff has these woodlands, they are very precious to us. We're quite limited in the area, the extent of the county. But I really like the comment that we had in the NRW survey, that people love the fact that it makes you feel you're a million miles away from the city when you're in some of our woodlands. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you both. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you very, very much for that. Okay, it's coming up to 2 o'clock. We're a little bit over time. There's no worries whatsoever. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd. 3 valuable showcases there, of course, and all of the speakers will be on the panel later on, just before 3, hopefully, for your questions later on this afternoon. Hopefully, you'll put some questions in the Q&A. I can see a few coming in now. Yeah, and that's fine. Great. And as I said, all the showcases, the biogs, and all the content is available, of course, on the event box, just to peruse at your leisure, as they say. Okay, I'm hoping, as I say, that some questions are going to come in for our panelists. Use the Q&A. Don't forget to tweet. Use the hashtag, of course, in Welsh and in English. Now, even syth mewn i'r rhan dau, os gwelwch hwnna. No break today. No break. We won't have a break if you don't mind. We'll go straight into part 2 of the session, if we may. It's your opportunity, as I say, to have your say. So please go back to the lobby in event box, the word lobby, look for and then go into breakout conversations, sesiwn sgwrsio yn y Gymraeg. Click onto the appropriate link. It's the last one, of course, under the 12th of March. It says 1350, and I think the word now. Click on that and then click on the green box on the left that says click here to join the Zoom meeting. Any problems, let us know. If you can all do that right now, please, that would be great. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Okay, here we are. We are back. Thank you very much. Right. At yr holi ag ateb, this is the third and final part of the session, of course. As I said, the last of the 3 days. It's Friday. We've had some lively, interesting discussions, some amazing comments and opinions. And as I said, now it's time for you to ask your questions. We've already met our panel briefly earlier on, of course. But if it's okay with you all, I can ask you to quickly introduce yourself again, please. Just a quick introduction, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So let's start with Erica. Erica?
Erica Dawson-Davis, Programme Manager for the National Forest, Welsh Government.
Thank you. Lucy?
Lucy van Weber from Visit Wales.
Ruth?
Ruth Waycott from the Wye Valley Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty.
Okay, that's not the Wye Valley behind you, there, is it?
It is.
It is, oh, okay. And then Nicola and Rosie. Nicola first.
Okay, Nicola Hutchinson, Cardiff Council. I'm the Conservation and Community Development Manager.
And finally, Rosie.
Rosie, I'm the Parks Strategy and Development Manager for Cardiff Council.
You weren't sure where you were there, Rosie. Okay, good. Right then, thank you so much. Now, there are a few questions, lots of comments, lots of information. I will start with a question, and forgive me, I'll have to look at my phone because we haven't had to manage to paste them into the screen. So I'm going to start with Tom Jenkins. He says, well, again, it's not a question as such. At last, a comment from a contributor about the importance of catering for all ethnic groups. Thank you. Inclusivity, that's a big word. And Jenny is agree with Tom, needs very careful use of language. And I'm going to come to well, Lucy maybe first, because it's more of an advertising type of thing. Needs more careful use of language. In Yolo's piece, I did feel a little bit, there's a reference to our Celtic heritage was a bit alienating to people who don't identify as Celtic. Now, there's a lot of comments going back and forth about this, but obviously, Lucy, well, and Erica, it's obviously very important to have the right words, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and also, I think we've got to understand that the right words are not the right words for everybody, and it's not a one size fits all. I mean, from a marketing perspective, the way that we talk about certain parts of Wales or products in Wales, we very much talk to different audiences. You'd use different descriptors and different language if you were talking to someone, a visitor that was potentially coming from Germany, than you would from someone who was maybe planning to go from Pembrokeshire to Snowdonia for a weekend. You know, and that's why when you look on something like the Visit Wales website, it's not a mirror image. The Welsh website, Croeso Cymru, talks to people because we know people know Wales. We're not speaking to people that haven't got a clue what Wales is about or how to travel around it or what may be here for them. So but that in the broader sense also extends to how you make people feel welcome and you're inclusive in your terminology. So I think Ruth's point, I really enjoyed the AONB presentation because it really illustrates that wider inclusivity and the need to always have that back in the back of your mind. The national parks do it as well all the time now. You know, it's one of those things that you have as a base. You've got to cater for everybody and give everyone the same welcome with that language.
Okay, Lucy, don't go ahead. I'm going to come back to you in a second, but I need to get something. Kelly is responding basically to that. That this is an Indigenous Celtic, often matriarchal society, and I'm very glad, and she has all kinds of things to say about that. Lucy, with regards to the tourism side of it, let's quickly talk about the Wales Coastal Path. Okay, I know. Do you see this national forest being along the same lines of that in general terms as well?
Absolutely, Chris. And these things are slow to build as well. You know, I see it completely in terms of the same sort of product as Wales Coastal Path, which 10 years on now, you know, is revered around the world as we were the first country in the world to have a total path that linked the entire coast. And I think we could be another first in Wales doing this in the same way with forestry and woodland. And it also links to a very important part of the way Wales has promoted itself over the last 3 years, which is talking about the Wales Way. The Wales Way are 3 routes throughout Wales that try and take people away, it's sort of egamogam, you know, take them off the main route, show them new and interesting things. And when Erica was describing the different routes that may be, you know, discussed, linear, circular, all of those things, any way that can help guide someone around Wales has got huge potential. But the forest, I'm actually just down the road from one of the exemplars as well, the Brethfur Forest. So, you know,
okay.
Yeah, and I see that huge wealth of different people, age groups, family makeups are all using that forest facility. And I just see this as a step off point to make that wider across Wales.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm going to come to Erica next. Erica, I have a question for you. Kelly, if you are listening, can you please maybe sort of, you've got an amazing amount of information, try and form them into a question if you can, because if there's so much information here, I could be here all day. Questions would be wonderful from you, Kelly, because you're obviously very, very knowledgeable. Erica, I have a question from Dan Dan Locke, is it? When considering economic benefit, will any consideration be given to natural capital accounting?
That's a very good
something you can answer?
question. That's a good question, Dan. Hello, Dan Locke. I know you. Yeah, well, obviously we're right at the beginning of this, and we're just looking at putting together, as Lucy just mentioned, the outline kind of organisational structure for this. So natural capital accounting is all part of that process, and I don't know if anybody managed to see Lloyd Harris's presentation on Wednesday night, wasn't it? We talked about the modelling and the IMP, the integrated modelling platform. Natural capital accounting is all part of that. So yeah, really good question. Thank you, Dan. That's fab.
Okay, good. Thank you, Erica. Okay, we're a little bit short on questions at the moment, guys. So if you can maybe, think of some questions to end this last session. Let's go to Rosie next and Nicola from an urban point of view. Are you excited about this National Forest project scheme purely from an urban point of view, first of all, and then we'll go to the more rural with Ruth. Let's start with Rosie. What's your opinion about this? Come on, tell us.
We're actually really excited about it. Yes, I mean, our project in Cardiff is like a little microcosm of what the big picture National Forest is about. I mean, in an urban area, you can't possibly cover everywhere with trees. It has to be about linking trees together, linking small woodlands, street trees of every type, and throughout the whole city. And that's what I see, the bigger picture being that Wales itself becomes linked with trees, so in turn we become linked into that as well. So it's a really exciting project, and I just love the idea of getting away from just planting numbers of trees. It's about just connecting areas and making trees work for Wales.
And so, Nicola, how difficult is it to get everyone on board? I mean, there's a lot of people involved here with different interests and different agendas, obviously, but this is a big deal. This is a big project to get everyone on board as much as possible. Not everyone, it's not going to be possible, is it? But from your point of view, from your work as it were, are you seeing this is going to be a massive challenge for everybody, not just Welsh Government?
I think it will be a challenge. Certainly for us within the urban environment, finding the space to plant the trees that we want to plant is a challenge, and bringing everyone along with us is also another challenge, because not everyone loves trees as much as most of the people probably attending this do. Some people see it as something that they would like to remove because it stops their signal for their satellite dish or blocks their views. Those are more the longer term with larger trees, but they're not looking at the wider benefits that trees actually offer them. And this, I think the National Forest offers a really big opportunity to really promote the value and importance of trees in their widest view and widest sort of amount of benefits that they offer people, and connect to the rest of the Wales, which is a fantastic opportunity.
Okay, I think infrastructure is a big word, isn't it, in these last 3 days of roads and railways. The question is, Erica, again, is there funding to improve public transport? Maybe that's not your remit as such, but because of the geography of Wales, there is there is now, isn't it? We know there's a problem with the roads if you are wanting lots of people to visit. So is obviously public transport is going to be included in the equation, I presume?
Absolutely, yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at. We need to look at the whole funding and delivery models of the National Forest first. And then start looking at what we need to connect. When we were talking about connections and connectivity, it covers a range of different things, from like I say, people's connection with the trees, to actually ecosystem connections, to green infrastructure type connections. To somebody spoke about sustrands earlier. We were talking about linking into cycle routes and cycleways. Yeah, so transport linkages is definitely on the list of things to look at as we go forward.
Okay, are there any targets with regards to the amount of new planting? Are there any targets set for the next whatever years?
There are Welsh Government targets set on woodland, and that's part of our bigger forestry forest policy sort of targets. The National Forest itself hasn't got targets set on it yet. The National Forest outcomes, if you've seen, is all about the outcomes-based approach. So it's not necessarily the amount of it's all the added and additionality you get from the National Forest as well. So it is part, you know, if we can create new forests, we plant new trees, that is part of the whole picture, but we are part of a bigger thing than just tree planting targets, but we will contribute to them, obviously.
Okay, we've talked about then I'm going to go to rural next. Ruth, in your part of the world, what might the economic benefits be with regards to this non-forest in your part of the world, as it were?
In the Wye Valley AONB, I think they're interconnected. I think there's definitely going to be a tourism benefit here. So businesses that service tourists, not just traditional accommodation, but also activity tourism providers. I think they're absolutely crucial to this. And I think that's, I was just looking at the questions. Sorry, you took me by surprise there. And one of them was about how might tourism revenue be used or diverted to help fund woodland management and things like that. And I think, you know, that we see it in the Wye Valley quite a lot, that the cycle hire companies and the off-road, there's quite a few companies who take people on mountain bike tours around the valley. There's a huge in terms of canoeists on the Wye, that's quite a big problem, you know, huge numbers coming. And those operators, activity holiday operators, should, I feel, be contributing towards some of the management issues that come out of extra, you know, lots of people coming to the area. So I think, you know, we need to be looking at those questions that are probably quite unsavoury for operators in the tourism sector, but, you know, we need to do this properly. So yeah, okay. I mean, sorry, what was the question?
Well, I think you've answered it. I'm also. Let's go back to Lucy then, talk about the tourism. Again, I'll ask you the same question. How might the economic benefits arising from tourism, etc., be fed back to fund the woodland management, do you think, Lucy?
I think, you know, over the last few years, people have debated and discussed things like visitor payback schemes. And for one reason or another, maybe it hasn't been the right time, but I think it's once again going to be at the forefront of people's minds in the next year or two now, coming out of COVID. And I think what we've also seen this year is how important, you know, one of the ladies who was on our breakout group, Jenny, made the point very, very well. You know, tourism can be a very good thing, but it can be a detrimental thing if it's not done in the right way. I hope that we are moving in a direction to make sure it's done in the right way now. Community concerns are at the heart of planning, and you know, aspects along, you see people coming into Wales, for example, or people moving from one part of Wales to another to visit somewhere for the day. You know, what we'd like to see is that they stay longer than a day, or at least if they are coming for the day, they're putting money back into that local community, whether it's through local produce or buying a cup of coffee locally, and making sure that that whole supply chain is fed in each area. So you know, Ruth and I feel, you know, we're on very similar lines in that respect. It's a balance. It's a tourism balance. I hate the word over tourism. You hear that a lot. What we're talking about really is tourism balance, and that's got to be tourism that's good for residents and businesses in Wales and good for visitors. Okay, excellent. Yeah, balance is a big word.
Can somebody ask me? Can somebody tell me where Hendra Lake is? Hendra Lake, David Fitzpatrick, it says an exclusive environment began with the Romans. Is a great example. Can we try to do the same across Wales? Nicola, you know where Hendra Lake is? I can see you nodding away there.
Sorry, yes, it's east of Cardiff, so it's right on the kind of Cardiff fringe. It's got a lovely lake and some nice walks, and it's a lovely place. It's all part of the Living Levels project as well. It kind of falls into the Gwent Levels.
Okay, sorry, David, you've just said it's close to Rymney in Cardiff. Okay, a couple of comments there before I pick up Kelly's question. The accessibility issue is clearly a challenge. We need accessibility groups, says David, to be part of the forest development. Now, Rose, I'm going to come to you then, if I may, with regards to accessibility. Again, what's your opinion about the accessibility? It needs to be sorted out, obviously, again, as part of the big picture, yes?
Yes, definitely. We're doing a lot of work generally in Cardiff on accessibility. In fact, we've got one project where we are working very much on on a sloping area, trying to introducing trampers and which are sort of 4x4 mobility wheel 4x4 scooters things, for people to be able to get access into the country, into the a park right on the edge of Cardiff, up a hill that they may not otherwise think that they could get up. So, you know, we're just trying to think of ways of actually involving people in different circumstances. You know, so yeah, it's definitely right there in the midst of everything else. There's a lot of issues, you know, that we're trying to cover, and yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. Right, okay, I'm going to come from a slightly different angle, if you don't mind. Kelly obviously has an opinion that's a little bit different, maybe. Why don't we use the forests first to make Wales a more egalitarian country, help deprived areas and create employment and education opportunities for local? And Lucy, close your eyes. Why concentrate on tourism first? So
I would say, well, it might be an opener for Erica maybe to come in on this one as well, but because I know the National Forest is about a lot more than tourism. So, but I would say that what has been shown up very clearly in the last 12 months is that interdependency of local areas and local communities around tourism, but it's got to be on their terms. You know, whether it's supplying wood for fencing for an attraction or it's a local food supplier. I think, you know, when someone visits a community, they are part of that community. So I don't see them as separate at all. But Erica, do you want to sort of expand on it's much wider, isn't it? Chris, I nearly took over then in chairing, sorry.
It's fine. Absolutely, the National Forest is more than tourism. I mean, obviously we've had a brilliant presentation by Lucy today and Rosie and Nicola and Ruth, which looked more at the tourism and visiting aspect. But earlier in the week we looked at the more commercial aspects of forestry and looking at homegrown timber and that type of thing as well. So, and foraging and food production, and all of this has come out in the last 3 days. So the National Forest is more than tourism. It's more than the sum of its parts. So nothing is exclusive. It's all inclusive. And just to pick up on the helping deprived, absolutely helping deprived areas. Look, we can, you know, obviously look at that. It is national. That is that's the joy of this. We're bringing together lots of things that are already happening. There is amazing amount of work happening, right up from Llanrwst with Roger, who's on the call today, across to Wrexham, right down to Newport and across. We've had people from all areas of Wales join on these conversations, and there's some amazing work already happening. So we're not here to duplicate. We want to pull all that together and coalesce all of that together into that amazing thing that's connected and right across Wales, north, south, east and west.
Okay, good, thank you. And David also is mentioning Plymouth Woods in Ely, I know that. And Kelly is obviously stressing the mental health benefits as well to having woods and forests across the country. I'm going to go next, and keep an eye on the time here, to Rosie or Erica. A question from Mark. Given the limited number of rangers you have to cover your woodlands, what potential is there to involve volunteers and community groups? Now, I'm involved with Keep Wales Tidy myself, so I know the important work that they do. So who would like to address that? Rosie, you look very keen to address this question, Rosie.
It's probably more one for Nicola, actually, I would say, because she manages the ranger service in Cardiff. So
okay. I love the way people pass the buck, but Nicola, it's all yours.
I had a feeling I was going to get that one passed my way. There is a lot of opportunities. I mean, COVID has affected and impacted how we work with volunteers this year, and hopefully we'll go back to normal. But under normal circumstances, we have a huge amount of volunteer work going on in our woodlands. Some with dedicated friends groups, some with just groups that come along and want to get involved with litter picks, coppicing work, all sorts of different things within the woodlands. I mean, I think we had over 16,500 volunteer hours in the year before COVID, when everything was relatively more normal. We're hoping to get back to that kind of level eventually, but obviously things are different, and we want to find different ways of getting people involved within our woodlands, because getting people hands-on and involved is so important.
And the same for your part of Wales, Ruth, with regards to people getting involved with volunteering and community groups?
Yes, I mean we have a conservation volunteer group. Obviously, they've not been doing anything recently, but yes, they do. They do get out and about and do work in particularly kind of dry stone walling or traditional meadows or all sorts of projects. We also have youth rangers who it's a special program, 2-year program for youngsters between 14 and 18. And at the end of that program, they're kind of much more informed and aware of the natural world, the threats and challenges that are being faced by it. So hopefully we're growing responsible and interested individuals for the future. And I think that's the way we've got to look at this in all aspects of growing the forest, the national forest. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot longer than many of the trees that we've got, got in the Wye Valley that are veteran trees. So I think we need to look at it long term, but it is about I mean, in terms of what I was talking about, that there are so many issues to do with inequality and ethnic diversity, exclusion, and it's not just ethnic groups, it's also the poorest in society. They suffer very, very similarly in terms of access to woodlands. So I think we do need to be standing back and looking at this. And if there are any people who've been attending today, I'd be more than interested in having a chat to them about how we can progress this this really urgent need to improve access for people. And it's long term. There's no two ways about it. As a national, we have a national association of AONBs, and we've been looking at that in a small group in terms of challenging. It's called Me and White Supremacy, and it might sound quite interesting, or what's that all about? But actually, we need to be doing these very challenging things to ensure that there is progress made. And that's a lot of soul searching on behalf of all of us, really.
Sure, and Carrie has a very valid point again, that the poorest have many barriers to healthy behaviours and being healthy in general. Nicola, quickly, Paul is asking for an update, please, on the Lisvein and Llanishen Reservoir.
I think this one's referring to the Welsh Water project that's going on there, and there is going to be volunteer involvement. There's a new friends group being set up, and Welsh Water is leading on it rather than Cardiff Council, but we are partners within that project. There is some woodland management work that's come through, some recent funding work, which I think might be the funding stream that Erica was referring to earlier. So yes, there's going to be some interesting work going on there. I haven't got a date when it's going to start, but it's being planned.
Okay, I'm going to come to the last one, if I may then, please. Back to Erica. Lee Turner, well, he's mentioning the fact that there's so many trees lost to ash dieback and other diseases. Obviously, that's an important point. I have to end with this. England has 10%, Wales has 15%, and Scotland 19%. A 5% increase target by area would make us the most tree-covered nation in the UK. Is that a target we can achieve, Erica?
It's a way of looking at it I haven't thought about before. Yeah, there's lots of work going on what our target should be, and obviously we heard from Christine this morning about the Climate Change Committee targets and the balanced pathway. So that a lot of work's going on looking at that and just how we achieve what we need to achieve, and I think John spoke about that as well this morning on the Q&A. So yeah, we're definitely looking at things. So thank you.
Watch this space there, yeah? Thank you very, very much. Thank you to you all for contributing. Thank you for the questions and the comment. And as I said, it is being recorded, so the Q&A, the chat is being recorded. It will be available at a later date. So we've come to the end, if you like. Diolch I chi gyd, fel wedes I, diolch I chi gyd am gymryd rhan. As Cliff Richard once said in 1968, congratulations. Yes, congratulations to all who have attended and taken part. I think you'd agree it's been a lively day. Certainly, it's been a lively week, certainly for me and the team. Before we end, I'd like to hand you over to the head of the National Forest Scheme herself. She's just been with us on the panel, of course. She's been with us all week. She's living this National Forest project constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I think. So Erica Dawson-Davies, I think you want to say a few words, Erica.
Yeah, really, I really want to say thank you to everybody that's attended any session. I know some people have been with us throughout the whole 6 sessions, so well done, you get the medals. Paul, I think Paul Davis is one of those. Absolutely invaluable comments. I have to say, this has been an absolutely brilliant 3 days. We've had some amazing projects being talked about. We've had amazing contributions, and your generosity of your knowledge and your time, because it's taken a lot of people's time. I totally appreciate it. To sit here and watch us sort of mess around with Zoom and all of this, it's been brilliant. So I've got just a couple of thank yous. Thank you to Casbar, who organised all of this and got all this together. Absolutely brilliant. And thank you to Adam. You know, absolutely brilliant with all the next slides and can you get me into this room and that room? So thank you, Adam. Thank you to the Welsh Government team that pulled this together in the first place. Anne and Laura and Lucy, brilliant. Thank you to anybody who contributed. Thank you to the panel today. We've had some amazing contributions and the content has been really brilliant, spreading right across forestry and woodlands. And our sort of natural environment. We've really looked at it from every single angle. So thank you so much. There's been an overarching buzz about this, which has been absolutely gorgeous. We met yesterday with the First Minister and our Minister, the Minister for Environment and Rural Affairs, with some young people, and they were absolutely brilliant. And they came up with some lovely ideas. They don't have a can't do attitude. They have a completely can do attitude, and that came through. And it was a wonderful session. And there'll be some quotes coming up from that soon. But we really have enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed it and taken things from it too. So thank you. My last thank you is to Chris, who has been absolutely fantastic in holding all of this together for 3 days and keeping us all on time and keeping us doing what we should be doing. So thank you, Chris, really appreciate it. You've been absolutely brilliant, and you're so your enthusiasm for the subject and getting so involved in it has been shone through. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Erica. It's been an absolute pleasure. Has it only been 3 days? Oh my word, it feels like at least 7. Okay, Adam, I think we've got a link for a bit of an evaluation form coming up soon, and I think there will be an email arriving any day soon from Casbar. There should be a link in the chat button there now. There we are. Look, it's an evaluation form, basically, just for your opinion on how we've done, how it's gone, how do you think it's all gone. We'd appreciate if you could take the time to fill that in. It'd be great. But as I say, if you don't get it now, don't panic. There will be an email sent to you any time soon. Let me just minimize this. Okay, so before we go, don't disappear just yet. We are going to play a couple of videos, and there's a lovely video with Yola Williams. Stay with us. We're going to play this one in Welsh, then in English, and then we'll come back for a final goodbye. Okay, let's have the Welsh one first, please, Adam.
Mae yna rhywbeth hudolus am goedwig. Fel un gyda natur, maen nhw'n dda i'r enaid. Da ni ddim yn teimlo yn unig nag ar goll, ond yn gysylltiedig. Yn gysylltiedig â'n gwreiddiau Celtaidd a chwedlau o'r Mabinogi. Mae coedwigoedd yn cyfoethogi ein bywydau mewn cymaint o ffyrdd. Bydd Coedwig Genedlaethol Cymru yn cysylltu ein coetiroedd hynafol a newydd yn dod â diwylliant ein gorffennol a'n presennol i fywyd i ddathlu Cymru fel gwlad wedi ei chyfoethogi gan ein coetiroedd. Dim plannu coedwig ydy'r cynllun, ond plannu syniad a'i wylio'n tyfu dros genedlaethau. Mae o'n syniad fydd yn siapio ein gwydnwch fel cenedl yn y dyfodol, yn creu cryfder drwy gydbwysedd ac yn dylanwadu ein hamgylchedd, ein cynefin a'n bywydau, yn ddiwylliannol, yn economaidd ac yn gynaliadwy. Yn cynhyrchu ffyniant masnachol trwy greu ymwelwyr, diwydiant a swyddi. Byddwn yn adfer, gwella a chreu coetiroedd a chynefinoedd mewn ffordd gysylltiedig ar hyd a lled Cymru. Wrth gymryd yr agwedd, y goeden iawn yn y lle iawn, ochr yn ochr a safonau a chanllawiau coedwigaeth y Deyrnas Unedig, bydd ein Coedwig Genedlaethol yn sefydlu tirweddau a chynefinoedd cryf, cynaliadwy wedi gwreiddio'n gadarn i amddiffyn ein gwlad mewn nifer o ffyrdd o effeithiau newid yr hinsawdd i lifogydd. Mae ein Coedwig Genedlaethol yn ymwneud â mwy na choed yn unig. Mae'n ymwneud â chwarae rhan mewn tyfu a rhannu Cymru mewn dyfodol sy'n dduw ac yn ffynnu am genedlaethau i ddod. Eich Coedwig Genedlaethol chi ydy hon. Byddwch yn rhan ohoni. There's something magical about forests. At one with nature, they're good for our soul. We feel not alone, not lost, but connected. Connected to our Celtic past and tales from the Mabinogion. Forests enrich our lives in so many ways. The National Forest for Wales will connect our ancient and new woodlands, bringing our past and present culture to life, celebrating Wales as a land enriched by our woodlands. The plan isn't simply to plant a forest, it's to plant an idea and watch it grow for generations. It's an idea that will shape our future resilience as a nation, creating strength through balance and influencing our environment, our habitats and our lives, culturally, economically and sustainably. Will generate commercial prosperity by creating visitors, industry and jobs. We will restore, enhance and create woodlands and habitats in a connected way across the length and breadth of Wales. Taking a right tree, right place approach alongside UK forestry standards and guidelines, our National Forest will establish strong, sustainable landscapes and habitats, firmly rooted to protect our country in a number of ways, from climate change effects to flooding. Our National Forest is about more than just trees. It's about playing a part in growing and sharing a future Wales that's alive and thriving for generations to come. This is your National Forest. Be part of it.
Yes, indeed. Be part of it as much as you can. Felly, diolch yn fawr iawn I Iolo, a wonderful individual there. Okay, diolch I chi gyd. Thanks all again, a massive personal thanks from myself to Erica, to Welsh Government, to Casbah, to Buffoon Media and all the fabulous team. There's so many people, absolutely wonderful. Love working them all every time. Enjoy the weekend and get as much fresh air as possible, okay? Stay safe, stay healthy. And as the Spice Girls sang in year 2000, goodbye.